What's this doing here?
The watch wasn't mine. Ethan Gray stood in his kitchen doorway, construction boots still caked with concrete dust, staring at the Rolex Submariner gleaming on his granite countertop. 42 years old, 6'2" of weathered muscle and marine discipline, he'd built this house with his own hands. Every beam, every tile, every fixture chosen with care for the woman who'd promised to share it forever, the woman who was supposed to be at her marketing conference in Chicago. Lena? His voice echoed through rooms that suddenly felt foreign. No answer, just the hum of central air and the distant rumble of traffic on Route 94. He picked up the watch. Heavy, expensive, the kind of status symbol his wife's corporate crowd flaunted at dinner parties while he nursed a beer in the corner, dirt still under his fingernails despite scrubbing. Engraved on the back, ZC, Achievement Unlocked, Zane Calder, Lena's co-worker, the pretty boy marketing executive with the perfect teeth and Italian suits, who'd been mentioned a few too many times in casual conversation lately. Ethan's phone buzzed. Text from Lena. Conference running late. Home tomorrow evening. Love you. Sent 3 hours ago from Chicago. He walked to the living room window and peered through the blinds. Lena's BMW sat in the driveway, engine ticking as it cooled. Ethan! His brother Tyson's voice boomed from the back patio. You home, man? Grabbed us some beers! Ethan slipped the watch into his pocket and opened the sliding door to find Tyson lounging in a deck chair, 2 Budweisers sweating on the glass table between them. His younger brother looked relaxed. Too relaxed for someone who'd supposedly driven over spontaneously. Thought you were working late at the garage, Ethan said, settling into his chair but keeping his eyes on Tyson's face. Slow day. Besides, felt like hanging with my big brother. Tyson cracked open a beer and handed it over. You look tense, E. Construction business wearing you down? Business is fine. Ethan accepted the beer but didn't drink. Lena's in Chicago. Yeah, she mentioned that. Big presentation, right? She'll knock 'em dead. Tyson's smile didn't reach his eyes. Hey, you catch the game yesterday? Wilson threw 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Incredible comeback. They talked football for 20 minutes, Tyson animated and chatty, while Ethan's mind raced. His brother had been to 3 Packers games this season. Premium seats, expensive dinners afterward, all on a mechanic's salary that barely covered rent on his 1-bedroom apartment. Ethan's construction company had been profitable, sure, but not premium seats at Lambeau profitable. Not for an employee, anyway. Tyson. Ethan set down his untouched beer. Where'd you get the money for those season tickets? His brother's laugh came too quick, too loud. Buddy at work hooked me up. Employee discount type deal. What buddy? You don't know him. Tyson stood up fast, nearly knocking over his chair. Speaking of work, I should head out. Early day tomorrow. Ethan watched his brother flee through the side gate without another word, leaving his half-empty beer in a wake of nervous energy. The house fell silent again. Ethan pulled out the watch and studied it under the patio lights. Zane Calder. Achievement unlocked, like life was some kind of game. His phone rang. Mia's name flashed on the screen. Tyson's 14-year-old daughter. Uncle Ethan? Dad left his phone at your place. He's freaking out. I don't see it, sweetheart. Check the couch cushions? He's always losing stuff in couches. A pause. Oh, wait. Here he comes. Never mind. The line went dead. Ethan searched the patio furniture anyway, because Mia had sounded nervous. And in his experience, nervous teenagers usually meant trouble. He found Tyson's phone wedged between the seat cushion and armrest of the outdoor love seat. The screen lit up with notifications, dozens of them. Text messages from a contact labeled simply L. Ethan's thumb hovered over the screen. He'd never been the type to snoop through other people's phones. Military discipline ran deep, even in civilian life. Respect privacy. Follow the chain of command. Honor your word. But the watch in his pocket felt like it was burning a hole through the denim. He swiped up. The messages painted a picture that made his stomach drop. L. E's working late again. Coast is clear. L. Tell Zane to park in the garage this time. Mrs. Henderson saw his car last week. L. You're cut from the Anderson job cleared. $15K, don't blow it on poker this time. L. Conference in Chicago is perfect cover. 3 days. Make sure E doesn't get suspicious. The timestamps went back months. The most recent was from 2 hours ago. L. Zane's watch is on kitchen counter. Can you grab it before E gets home? Tyson's response. On my way. He's buying the beer story. Ethan's hands shook as he scrolled back further, finding transaction screenshots, photos of bank deposits, discussions about construction contracts he'd never authorized. His own company being used to launder money while he worked 16-hour days pouring concrete and framing houses. But worse than the financial betrayal were the casual references to him, like he was some kind of obstacle to work around. A dog to be managed with treats and distractions. You're cut from the Anderson job. Ethan remembered the Anderson project, a high-end retail development that had gone over budget and behind schedule due to mysterious supply delays and equipment failures. He'd eaten the cost overruns personally, nearly $40,000, because he honored his contracts. Meanwhile, his wife and brother had been skimming money from inflated invoices. The back door slid open, and Lena stepped out, car keys jingling in her hand. Ethan looked up at his wife of 8 years, still beautiful at 36, auburn hair pulled back in the severe bun she wore to important meetings, navy blazer crisp despite the late hour. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd never been caught. "Thought I heard voices," she said, scanning the patio. "Tyson stopped by?" "Conference running late?" Ethan asked. Lena's smile was perfect, practiced. "Flight got delayed. Mechanical issues. I was stuck at O'Hare for 3 hours." She moved to kiss his cheek, but he stood up, putting distance between them. "Where's your luggage?" "Still in the car. I'm exhausted." Her eyes flicked to the empty beer bottles. "You and Tyson have a good talk?" "We talked about football." Ethan studied her face. "And money." Something flickered behind her eyes, but her expression remained neutral. "Money? Season tickets are expensive." "Tyson's always been good with his finances, saves up for things he wants." Lena's voice carried a note of condescension, the same tone she used when explaining marketing concepts to clients she considered beneath her. "Not everyone spends money the second they earn it." The implication stung because it was calculated to sting. Ethan had grown up poor, parents dead before he turned 18, putting himself through community college and trade school on military benefits, while Lena sailed through state university on daddy's money. She'd married him anyway, claimed she loved his work ethic and honesty, claimed she wanted a real man, not another corporate suit. "Found something of yours in the kitchen," Ethan said, pulling out the watch. Lena's perfect composure cracked for just a moment. Her eyes widened, pupils dilating before she caught herself. "That's not mine. Engraved to ZC. I have no idea how that got there." She crossed her arms, shifting into defense mode. "Maybe Tyson brought it? He's always picking up random things at estate sales." Zane called her. "Who?" Ethan almost laughed at the audacity. "Your coworker, marketing executive, drives the red Porsche. You've mentioned him at least 50 times in the past month." "Oh, Zane." Lena waved dismissively. "We work on some of the same accounts. Maybe he left it at the office and I accidentally grabbed it with my things. You know how scattered I get during busy periods?" She was good. Really good. If he hadn't seen Tyson's phone, he might have believed her. Lena had always been the smooth talker in their relationship, the one who handled negotiations and difficult conversations while he focused on getting work done. "Want me to return it to him?" "Sure. I'll take it to the office tomorrow." Lena held out her hand. Ethan pocketed the watch instead. "I'll drop it off myself. Haven't seen the marketing department in a while. Might be interesting." "That's not necessary. Least I can do." Ethan moved toward the sliding door. "Going to grab a shower. Long day." He left her standing on the patio, mouth slightly open, calculating her next move. In the bathroom, Ethan stared at himself in the mirror while hot water pounded his shoulders. The face looking back was older than he remembered. Lines carved by sun and stress, gray threading through dark hair. When had he started looking worn down? Maybe that's why she'd strayed. He wasn't the young Marine she'd married anymore, all swagger and possibility. Just another working man with dirt under his nails and a body that ached at the end of long days. No, he caught himself in that thought and killed it. Lena had made a choice. Multiple choices over months involving his own brother and his own business. This wasn't about his appearance or their relationship growing stale. This was about greed and betrayal and the kind of calculated cruelty that required planning. Ethan finished his shower and walked to their bedroom to find Lena already in bed, covers pulled up to her chin, eyes closed. Fake sleeping. Another performance. He lay down beside her, close enough to feel her body heat, but not touching, and waited. 20 minutes later, when her breathing shifted into genuine sleep rhythms, he carefully extracted her phone from the nightstand and carried it to his home office. Lena's passcode was their anniversary. Of course it was. The affair had been going on for 4 months, based on the message history. It had started as flirtation during late office meetings, escalated to lunch dates and afternoon hotel visits, then evolved into something more complex when Zane suggested they could make money together. Real money, more than either of them made in legitimate salary. The scheme was elegantly simple. Lena would identify potential construction projects through her marketing network, then pass inside information to Zane, who would approach property developers as an independent consultant. Together, they'd recommend Ethan's company for the work, but with inflated budgets and padded expenses that they'd split through shell companies and cash payments. Ethan had built his reputation on fair pricing and quality work. He'd been undercutting his own profits for years while his wife and her lover skimmed the difference. But the money was just part of it. The messages between Lena and Zane were explicit, crude, filled with the kind of passion she hadn't shown Ethan in years. Worse were the jokes about him. "E's working late again. Perfect for us. Think he suspects anything? Too dense to notice. He's useful, but so predictable." The most devastating message was from 3 weeks ago. Zane. "Ever think about leaving him?" Lena. "All the time. But divorce means splitting assets. This way I get the money and the fun. He's too stupid and trusting to figure it out." Zane. "What if he does?" Lena. "He won't. Ethan's a follower, not a leader. 20 years in the military taught him to take orders, not think for himself. Besides, who would believe him? Successful marketing executive cheating with blue-collar husband? Please." Ethan read that exchange 3 times, each pass hitting harder than the last. Not just unfaithful, not just stealing, but genuinely contemptuous of everything he was and everything he'd built. He forwarded key messages and screenshots to his personal email, then deleted the evidence from her sent folder. Lena was smart, but she wasn't military smart. She'd never learned to think tactically, to plan for contingencies, to consider her enemy's capabilities. That was about to become a very expensive oversight. Ethan slipped the phone back onto the nightstand and returned to bed. Lena stirred as he settled under the covers. "Everything okay?" she mumbled, still mostly asleep. "Perfect," he said. Morning came with the smell of coffee and bacon. Lena stood at the stove in her silk robe, humming softly, playing the devoted wife. She'd showered and styled her hair, applied makeup with the precision of someone preparing for battle. "Thought I'd make your favorite breakfast before work," she said without turning around. "You seemed tense last night." Ethan poured coffee and studied her profile. Still beautiful, still carrying herself with the confidence that had attracted him 8 years ago. Hard to believe someone so elegant could be so vicious underneath. "Appreciate it." He sat at the breakfast bar and waited. Lena plated eggs and bacon with restaurant-quality presentation, then perched on the stool beside him, close enough to touch, radiating warmth and familiarity. "About Zane's watch," she said casually. "I mentioned it to him this morning. He said he'd swing by the office early to pick it up. Save you the trip." "Already texted him?" "Called him on my way to the shower. Caught him before his morning run." Lena sipped her coffee, watching Ethan's reaction over the rim. He was grateful. Apparently it was a gift from his father. Another lie. Ethan had found the purchase receipt in Zane's messages. Bought 3 months ago with money skimmed from the Anderson project. But he nodded and kept eating. "Nice of you to help. That's what partners do. We look out for each other." Lena's hand found his arm, fingers tracing the tattoo he'd gotten after his second deployment. "Speaking of which, I've been thinking about us." "Yeah? This house. Our life together. Sometimes I wonder if we're too comfortable, you know? Like we're sleepwalking through our marriage." Ethan nearly choked on his eggs. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. "What do you mean?" "We used to be more adventurous, more spontaneous." Lena's voice carried a wistful note, like she was genuinely nostalgic. "Remember our trip to Colorado? That little cabin by the lake? We hiked all day and made love all night." He remembered. 2 years ago, before the affair started, when they'd still been happy. Or when he'd thought they were happy. "We could do that again," he said carefully. "Could we?" Lena's smile was sad. "Lately it feels like we're just roommates. You work, I work, we eat dinner and watch TV. When's the last time we really talked? About dreams and plans and what we want from life?" The manipulation was expert level. Create intimacy through shared memories, then suggest the relationship's problems were mutual and solvable. Meanwhile, she was probably texting Zane under the table, planning their next rendezvous. "What do you want from life?" Ethan asked. "I want to feel alive again, excited, like anything's possible." Lena leaned closer, her perfume mixing with the breakfast smells. Maybe we should take that trip to Colorado this weekend. Just disappear for a few days. Can't. Anderson project deadline is Monday. Work will always be there, Ethan. But chances to reconnect with your wife? Those are precious. She was good, really, really good. If he hadn't read her messages, he might have been touched by her sudden desire to rekindle their romance. Might have canceled the Anderson deadline and driven to Colorado, leaving Zane and Tyson free to rob him blind while he was gone. Rain check? Ethan finished his eggs and stood. After the Anderson project wraps, we'll plan something special. Disappointment flashed across Lena's face before she caught herself. Of course, work first. Always work first. The guilt trip landed with professional precision, making him feel selfish for prioritizing his business over their marriage. Even knowing it was manipulation, Ethan felt the familiar tug of obligation. That was her real skill. Not just lying, but making him complicit in his own destruction. I should get going, Lena said, standing and smoothing her robe. Big presentation this afternoon. Wish me luck? Good luck. She kissed his cheek, lingering just long enough to seem affectionate, then headed upstairs to get dressed. Ethan cleared the breakfast dishes and waited until he heard her car pulling out of the driveway before making his phone call. Davidson Investigations. I need to hire a private detective. What kind of case? Adultery? Financial fraud? Maybe more? How soon do you need results? Ethan looked around the kitchen where he'd eaten breakfast with his wife 30 minutes ago, where she'd performed concern for their marriage while planning to destroy him. Yesterday. The detective's name was Janet Walsh, a former police investigator who specialized in white-collar crime and domestic cases. Her office occupied the second floor of a strip mall between a tax preparation service and a nail salon, but the woman herself inspired confidence. Mid-50s, gray hair pulled back severely, eyes that missed nothing. Tell me about your wife, she said, pulling out a legal pad. Ethan handed over printed screenshots from Lena's phone, along with financial records from his construction company. She's been having an affair with a coworker and using my business to launder money. Walsh reviewed the documents with professional detachment, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When she finished, she looked up with something like sympathy. How long have you known? Since last night. And you want me to do what, exactly? Find out how deep this goes, who else is involved, how much money they've stolen. Build a case that will stand up in court. Divorce court? Ethan considered the question. Divorce would mean splitting assets, paying alimony, enduring months of legal battles while Lena played the victim. She'd probably claim emotional abuse, maybe get a restraining order, paint him as an unstable veteran who couldn't handle civilian life. Maybe. Or criminal court. Walsh nodded approvingly. Smart. Financial fraud, conspiracy, potentially racketeering if this goes deep enough. Much harder for her to spin that as a marriage problem. How long will you need? Couple weeks for a preliminary report. Full investigation could take a month or more, depending on how sophisticated their operation is. Walsh leaned back in her chair. Fair warning. This kind of betrayal does things to people. Makes them want revenge more than justice. You sure you want to go down this road? Ethan thought about Lena's performance that morning, the casual cruelty of her messages, the way she'd looked him in the eye and lied without hesitation. I'm sure. All right then, let's destroy some lives. That afternoon, Ethan drove to his construction site instead of the office, needing physical work to burn off the nervous energy coursing through his system. The Anderson project was a strip mall renovation, the kind of bread-and-butter work that paid the bills, but didn't require much creativity. Perfect for a man whose mind was occupied with darker pursuits. He'd been swinging a sledgehammer for 2 hours when his phone rang, Tyson's name on the screen. You find my phone? His brother asked without preamble. Yeah, dropped it off at the garage this morning. Thanks, man. What would I do without you looking out for me? The irony was so thick Ethan could taste it. That's what family's for. Speaking of which, Mia wants to know if you and Lena are coming to her school play next Friday. She's got a lead role in some Shakespeare thing. Ethan remembered Mia at 8 years old, gap-toothed and giggling, begging him to push her higher on the swing set behind their old house. Now she was 14, all legs and attitude, but she still called him Uncle Ethan and saved him seats at school events. Wouldn't miss it. Cool. Fair warning, though. It's one of those depressing Shakespeare deals. Somebody dies at the end. Don't they all? Tyson laughed. Good point. Hey, you sound weird. Everything okay? Just tired. Been working too much? When don't you work too much? Take a vacation, man. Life's short. After ending the call, Ethan stood in the construction site dust and considered his brother's advice. Life was short, too short to spend it being lied to and stolen from by the people who were supposed to love you most. Time to make some changes. The rest of the week passed in careful normalcy. Ethan went to work, came home, had dinner with Lena, watched television, made small talk about their respective days. The perfect husband, giving no sign that his world had shifted on its axis. Meanwhile, Janet Walsh worked her magic. Daily emails brought fresh revelations about the scope of Lena and Zane's operation. Bank records, phone logs, surveillance photos that painted a picture of systematic theft going back over a year. The Anderson project wasn't their first score. They'd been skimming money from Ethan's contracts since almost the beginning of their affair, stealing an estimated $150,000 through inflated invoices and phantom expenses. But the money was just the appetizer. The real feast was in Lena's personal communications, which Walsh had accessed through social media reconnaissance and digital forensics that Ethan didn't ask too many questions about. The affair had evolved beyond sex and greed into something uglier. Lena and Zane weren't just stealing money, they were building a future together, planning to drain Ethan's accounts and disappear once they'd extracted maximum value from his business. The timeline was aggressive. Based on their messages, they intended to make their move within the next month, probably right after the Anderson project finished and the final payment cleared. Lena would file for divorce on grounds of emotional abuse, claiming Ethan had become violent and unstable. She'd already been laying groundwork, making offhand comments to friends about his drinking problem and anger issues that would support her narrative. Meanwhile, Zane would leave his corporate job and start his own consulting firm, funded by stolen money and positioned to undercut Ethan's construction business with insider knowledge of his pricing and methods. The plan was elegant, efficient, and absolutely ruthless. If Ethan hadn't stumbled across Zane's watch, they might have pulled it off. Friday evening arrived with unseasonable warmth and Mia's school play. Ethan sat in the auditorium next to Lena, watching his 14-year-old niece deliver Shakespearean dialogue with surprising skill and poise. "She's good," Lena whispered during intermission. "Natural performer." "Takes after her dad," Ethan replied, watching Tyson beam with pride from the front row. "God, I hope not. Tyson's idea of performance art is belching the alphabet." They laughed together like a normal couple, sharing an inside joke about his brother's juvenile sense of humor. For a moment, Ethan almost forgot about the betrayal and the lies and the money. Almost remembered why he'd fallen in love with this woman in the first place. Then Lena's phone buzzed with a text message, and she tilted the screen away from him while typing a quick response. The spell broke. After the play, they all went to dinner at a family restaurant where Mia chattered excitedly about her performance and college plans and whether she wanted to study theater or medicine. 14 years old, and the world was full of possibilities. Ethan watched his niece's animated face and felt something cold settle in his chest. When this all came out, and it would come out, Mia would be caught in the crossfire. Her father exposed as a thief and co-conspirator, her uncle's marriage destroyed, her family torn apart by adult choices she couldn't control. Some prices were too high, even for justice, but some betrayals were too deep to forgive. "Uncle Ethan?" Mia's voice cut through his brooding. "You okay? You look sad. Just thinking about how proud I am of you tonight," he said, which was true enough. "Aw." Mia grinned and reached across the table to squeeze his hand. "You're the best uncle ever." Tyson raised his beer in a mock toast. "To the best uncle ever who taught my daughter that hard work pays off and good people finish first." Everyone clinked glasses while Ethan's stomach churned with the irony. Good people finish first. If only. Monday morning brought rain and the final push on the Anderson project. Ethan's crew worked through the weather, racing to meet the deadline that would trigger the last payment and, presumably, the final phase of Lena and Zane's plan. By noon, they were ahead of schedule. By 3 o'clock, they were essentially finished, just waiting for the city inspector to sign off on electrical and plumbing work. Ethan stood in the empty retail space, breathing sawdust and paint fumes, and called Anderson to arrange final payment. "Beautiful work as always," Anderson said over the phone. "Check will be ready tomorrow morning. Appreciate the business. Actually, I've been meaning to ask, you ever think about expanding operations? I've got 3 more projects lined up, but they're bigger scope. Might need additional financing and crew." Ethan looked around the space he'd transformed from empty shell to move-in ready retail. Good work. Honest work. The kind of craftsmanship that built reputations and generational wealth. All of it tainted now by theft and betrayal. "Let me think about it," he said. That evening, Lena was late coming home from work. Ethan waited in the living room, watching the clock and fighting the urge to call Janet Walsh for an update on the investigation. 8 o'clock became 9. 9 became 10. At 10:30, Lena's BMW pulled into the driveway. Ethan listened to her footsteps on the front porch, the jingle of keys, the soft whoosh of the door opening. "Sorry I'm late," she called out. "Client emergency. You know how it is." She appeared in the living room doorway, still beautiful, but showing signs of stress. Hair slightly mussed, makeup not quite perfect, the kind of details most people wouldn't notice. Ethan noticed everything now. "Long day," he agreed. "The longest?" Lena kicked off her heels and sank into the chair across from him. "Pour me a glass of wine. I need to decompress." He fetched wine from the kitchen, taking his time, using the moment to steady himself for what came next. "Here's to surviving Monday," Lena said, accepting the glass. "To surviving," Ethan echoed. They drank in comfortable silence for a few minutes, like an old married couple at the end of a routine day. The normalcy felt surreal given what he knew about her afternoon activities. "How was the Anderson project?" Lena asked eventually. "Finished ahead of schedule. Payment clears tomorrow." "That's wonderful. You should be proud." "I am." "What's next? More strip mall work?" Ethan studied his wife's face. The question seemed casual, but he caught the slight tension around her eyes, the way she held her wine glass a little too tightly. "Anderson offered me 3 more projects. Bigger scope. Better money." Interest flashed across Lena's features before she caught herself. "That sounds exciting. Will you need additional financing?" "Probably. Business credit line might not cover materials and labor for that scale of work." "I could help. My investment portfolio has been doing well lately. We could be partners." The offer hung in the air between them, laden with implications only Ethan understood. Lena wanted access to the new projects, wanted to sink her hooks deeper into his business before making her final move. "That's generous," he said. "Let me think about it." "Of course. No pressure." Lena finished her wine and stood. "I'm exhausted. Going to bed early." She kissed the top of his head in passing, a gesture so familiar and domestic it made his chest ache. Ethan waited until he heard water running upstairs, then retrieved his secure phone, a burner device Janet Walsh had recommended for sensitive communications. The private detective answered on the first ring. "Walsh. It's Gray. Any updates?" "Plenty. Can you meet tomorrow morning? I've got surveillance footage you need to see." "How bad?" "Bad enough." "And Gray? Don't confront them yet. We're close to having everything we need for criminal charges. But timing is crucial. You move too early, they'll lawyer up and destroy evidence." Ethan looked toward the staircase where his wife was getting ready for bed, probably texting Zane about their conversation and the new business opportunities. "How long?" "Few more days. Week at most. I know it's hard, but patience is your friend right now." After ending the call, Ethan sat in his living room and tried to imagine what normal felt like. Before the watch, before the messages, before he'd learned that the woman upstairs had been systematically destroying his life while sleeping beside him every night. Tomorrow he'd collect payment for the Anderson project. Tomorrow Lena and Zane would begin their endgame. Tomorrow everything would change. But tonight, for just a few more hours, he could pretend his marriage was real, and his brother was loyal, and the life he'd built meant something. Tomorrow he'd start tearing it all down. The Anderson payment cleared at 10:15 Tuesday morning. $130,000 deposited into Ethan's business account, minus the 40% that would immediately disappear into phantom expenses and inflated invoices. But not this time. Ethan had spent Monday evening creating new banking arrangements, opening accounts that only he controlled, transferring funds that couldn't be touched by authorized signers who'd been abusing their access. By noon, the money was secure and Lena's window of opportunity had slammed shut. His phone rang at 12:30. Lena's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "There's a problem with the business account." "What kind of problem?" "I can't access it. The bank says there's been some kind of security hold placed on withdrawals over $5,000. Ethan feigned confusion. "That's weird. Let me call them." "I already called. They said only the primary account holder can authorize changes. That's you." "I'll sort it out this afternoon." A pause. "This afternoon? Ethan, I have a client payment due today. I need access to those funds." "Client payment?" The Morrison account. I told you about it last week. Consulting fee for the new mall project. Another lie. There was no Morrison account, no consulting fee. Just Lena scrambling to explain why she needed immediate access to money that didn't belong to her. How much do you need? 25,000. That's a lot for consulting. It's a big project. Lena's voice carried an edge now, frustration bleeding through the careful control. Look, can you just call the bank and lift the hold? I'll explain everything tonight. Sure thing. Love you. Love you too. The line went dead and Ethan smiled for the first time in a week. Let the games begin. That afternoon brought another call, this one from Tyson. Hey man, weird question. Did you change the locks on the office? Ethan's construction company operated out of a converted warehouse on the industrial side of town. He kept an office there for meetings with clients and storage for expensive tools and materials. Tyson had a key, ostensibly for emergencies. Why? My key doesn't work. Tried to pick up that tile saw you borrowed last month. Which tile saw? A pause. The DeWalt. From the Morrison job. Another lie. Ethan had never borrowed a tile saw from Tyson, and there was no Morrison job. His brother was fishing, probably trying to access the office for reasons that had nothing to do with missing tools. I'll check on the locks, Ethan said. Maybe the landlord had them changed for security reasons. Yeah, maybe. No big deal. Just call me when you figure it out. Ethan didn't bother mentioning that he'd changed the locks himself 2 days ago, or that he'd installed security cameras to monitor who might try to break in. The footage from this morning showed Tyson spending 20 minutes trying various entry methods before giving up. His own brother, casing his business like a common thief. The betrayal cut deeper than Lena's affair. Marriage vows could be broken, but family was supposed to be forever. Blood was supposed to mean something. Apparently not. Wednesday brought rain and Janet Walsh's final report. They met at a diner on the outskirts of town, sitting in a corner booth while she spread documents across the table like a prosecution lawyer preparing for trial. It's worse than we thought, Walsh began. They've been running this scam on multiple contractors, not just you. Zane's got connections throughout the construction industry, and Lena's been using her marketing network to identify targets. Ethan studied photographs of Lena and Zane entering hotels, meeting with other business owners, exchanging envelopes in parking lots. A criminal enterprise masquerading as romance. How much money total? Conservative estimate, $400,000 across all victims. Your losses alone exceed $200,000 when you factor in lost contracts and damaged reputation. The number hit like a physical blow, $200,000. Years of 16-hour days and missed dinners and aching joints, all stolen by the two people he'd trusted most. There's more, Walsh continued. Zane's got gambling debts, serious ones. He owes money to some very unpleasant people, which explains why they accelerated their timeline. They're not just greedy, they're desperate. How desperate? Walsh pulled out another photograph. Zane talking to two men in expensive suits outside a downtown casino. Desperate enough to consider violence if their current plan doesn't work. Ethan's blood went cold. Violence against who? You, most likely. If you become a problem they can't solve through manipulation, they might try more direct methods. The diner suddenly felt too small, too exposed. Ethan looked around at the other customers. Retirees drinking coffee, construction workers grabbing lunch, normal people living normal lives without targets on their backs. What's your recommendation? Go to the police today. I've got enough evidence to support fraud charges, conspiracy, maybe racketeering. Let the system handle it. Ethan gathered the photographs and documents, thinking about courtrooms and lawyers and plea bargains that would reduce his wife's sentence to probation. Thinking about Zane's gambling debts and violent associates who might not care about legal proceedings. What if I handle it myself? Walsh's expression hardened. That's not what I do. I gather evidence for legal proceedings, not vigilante justice. I'm not talking about violence. What are you talking about? Ethan smiled without humor. I'm talking about giving them exactly what they deserve. That evening, Lena came home early with Chinese takeout and a bottle of expensive wine. The peace offering was obvious, but she played it casual. Thought we should celebrate, she said, setting containers on the kitchen table. Celebrate what? The Anderson payment clearing. Your business success. Us. Lena moved behind him and began massaging his shoulders. I know I've been distracted lately with work stress. I want to focus on what's really important. Her hands worked at the knots in his neck and shoulders, skilled fingers finding exactly the right pressure points. It felt good despite everything, muscle memory responding to familiar touch. The bank thing got sorted out, she said casually. What bank thing? The security hold on the business account. I talked to them this afternoon and everything's back to normal. Another lie. Lena had no access to the business account anymore, couldn't even check the balance without Ethan's authorization, but she needed to maintain the illusion of control. Good, he said. Wouldn't want any more complications. They ate dinner in comfortable conversation, Lena charming and attentive, asking about his work and sharing amusing stories from her office. The perfect wife, devoted and interested in his success. Ethan played along, letting her think the performance was working. After dinner, Lena suggested they watch a movie, something they hadn't done together in months. She curled up beside him on the couch, wine making her affectionate and nostalgic. Remember our first apartment? She said during a quiet moment. That tiny place with the broken air conditioner and neighbors who played music too loud? We were happy there. We were broke there, but happy. Lena's head found his shoulder. Sometimes I miss being broke. Everything was simpler when we had nothing to lose. The irony was devastating. They'd had everything to lose, and she'd chosen to lose it anyway. We could be simple again, Ethan said. Sell the house, start over somewhere else. Run away together? Lena lifted her head to study his face. That sounds romantic, and completely impractical. Why impractical? Your business is here. My career is here. We've got roots. Roots she was planning to poison and abandon within the month. Roots can be transplanted, Ethan said. Some can. Others die when you try to move them. Lena settled back against his shoulder. I think we're the kind that need to stay put. The movie played on while Ethan stared at the ceiling and planned his wife's destruction. Thursday morning brought unexpected visitors. Ethan was reviewing construction blueprints in his home office when the doorbell rang. Through the window, he saw two men in dark suits standing on his front porch. The same men from Janet Walsh's surveillance photos. Zane's creditors. Ethan opened the door with his phone already recording. Mr. Gray? The taller man smiled with predatory politeness. We're looking for Zane Calder. Understand you might know where to find him. Never heard of him. That's funny. Our information says he's been doing business with your company. Construction consulting. Very profitable business. The shorter man stepped closer, close enough that Ethan could smell his cologne and see the bulge of a weapon beneath his jacket. Mr. Calder owes our employer money, significant money. We're hoping you might help us collect. I don't know any Zane Calder, Ethan repeated, and I don't do business with loan sharks. The tall man's smile never wavered. Who said anything about loan sharks? We're debt collection specialists. Everything we do is perfectly legal. Then you won't mind if I call the police? Wouldn't mind at all. But that might complicate things for Mr. Calder, and complications have a way of spreading to innocent parties. The threat was delivered with casual professionalism, but the message was clear. Pay up or people get hurt. How much does he owe? $200,000 plus interest, plus penalties for late payment. Ethan whistled low. That's serious money. Very serious, which is why we're hoping for everyone's cooperation in resolving this matter quickly. What if I could help you find him? Interest flickered in both men's eyes. We're listening. Come back tomorrow evening, 6 o'clock. I might have some information by then. The men exchanged glances before the tall one nodded. We'll be here. Don't disappoint us, Mr. Gray. After they left, Ethan called Janet Walsh. Those were Vitali's people, she said after he described the encounter. Tony Vitali runs sports betting and loan operations out of 3 casinos. Not someone you want to owe money to. How long before they escalate? Depends on how patient they're feeling. Could be days, could be hours. These guys don't operate on normal timelines. Ethan thought about Lena arriving home to find Vitali's men waiting in their living room. The thought should have alarmed him. Instead, he felt a cold satisfaction. Thanks for the warning. Gray, whatever you're planning, be careful. These people kill for a living. That afternoon, Ethan made 3 phone calls that would change everything. The first was to his lawyer, authorizing the preparation of divorce papers citing adultery and financial fraud. The second was to his accountant, freezing all joint assets and business accounts. The third was to a contact from his military days who specialized in personal security. By evening, the stage was set for Act 3. Lena came home at her usual time, tired but trying to hide her stress. She'd been working overtime to manage the crisis created by her sudden lack of access to Ethan's money, scrambling to cover commitments and maintain appearances. How was your day? She asked over dinner, the question loaded with implications. Interesting. Had some visitors this morning? Lena's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Visitors? 2 men looking for Zane Calder. Seems he owes them money. The color drained from Lena's face. What did you tell them? That I never heard of him. Ethan watched his wife struggle to process this information. Should I have said something else? No, that was right. Lena's voice was tight. What kind of men? The kind who break kneecaps for late payments. Lena set down her fork, appetite gone. Did they say how much? 200,000, plus interest. The number hit her like a slap. Zane hadn't told her about the full extent of his debts. Probably hadn't wanted to scare her away from their partnership. Now she was learning that her lover was in deeper trouble than she'd imagined. They're coming back tomorrow, Ethan added casually. Coming back here? 6 o'clock. Said they wanted to discuss Mr. Calder's business relationships. Lena stood abruptly, pacing to the kitchen window and staring out at the backyard. Her reflection in the glass showed pure panic. We should call the police. And tell them what? That loan sharks are looking for someone I don't know? They threatened you. Did they? I thought they were just being friendly. Lena spun around, eyes flashing. This isn't a joke, Ethan. These people are dangerous. How would you know? The question hung in the air while Lena realized her mistake. She'd revealed knowledge she shouldn't possess, concern for a man she'd claimed not to know well. I've heard stories, she said weakly. Everyone knows about guys like that. Maybe Zane will sort it out before they come back. Maybe. Lena's voice was distant, mind racing through possibilities and escape routes. That night, she made 17 phone calls from the bathroom with the water running. Ethan listened through the thin walls as she pleaded with Zane to fix the situation, to find the money, to protect them both from consequences they'd brought on themselves. By morning, she'd aged 5 years. Friday brought chaos. Ethan woke to find Lena's side of the bed empty and cold. Her car was gone from the driveway, along with 2 suitcases and most of her jewelry. On the kitchen counter, a note in her handwriting. Ethan, had to leave town for a family emergency. My sister in Phoenix needs help with her kids. Will call when I can. Don't worry about me. Love, L. No sister in Phoenix, no family emergency, just panic and flight, abandoning 8 years of marriage without a real goodbye. Ethan crumpled the note and smiled. At noon, his phone rang. Tyson's name on the screen. Hey man, you hear from Lena? She was supposed to meet me for lunch but never showed. She left town. Family emergency. Everything okay? Phoenix, her sister needs help with the kids. That sucks. How long will she be gone? Ethan almost laughed at his brother's transparent fishing expedition. Not sure. Could be weeks. Damn. Well, give her my best when you talk to her. Will do. That afternoon brought the final pieces of Janet Walsh's investigation. Bank records showing massive transfers to offshore accounts, communications between Lena and other potential victims, evidence of a criminal conspiracy that stretched across 3 states. More than enough for federal charges. At 5:30, Ethan's military contact arrived. Jake Morrison was 45 years old, built like a tank, with the kind of quiet competence that came from 20 years in special operations. He'd left the Army to start a private security firm specializing in executive protection and crisis management. Heard you might have some trouble tonight, Jake said, settling into Ethan's living room. Maybe. Couple of guys looking for someone who isn't here anymore. Want them discouraged permanently or temporarily? Just discouraged. This is about sending a message, not starting a war. Jake nodded and began unpacking equipment from a military-style duffel bag. Night vision goggles, communication devices, weapons that were definitely not civilian legal. What's the message? That some debts can't be collected. At exactly 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Ethan opened it to find the same 2 men from yesterday, but their casual confidence had been replaced by sharp alertness. They'd done their homework, learned things about Zane's situation that changed their approach. Mr. Gray, we appreciate your cooperation. Come in. They followed him to the living room, eyes scanning for potential threats. Professional paranoia, the kind that kept dangerous men alive in dangerous situations. About Mr. Calder, the tall man began. He's not here. We know. Our information suggests he left town yesterday, along with your wife. The words hung in the air like a challenge. They knew about the affair, knew about the stolen money, knew exactly why Lena and Zane had run. Interesting information. Very interesting, which brings us to our problem. Mr. Calder owes our employer money, but Mr. Calder has disappeared. That leaves us looking for alternative sources of recovery, such as business partners, financial backers, people who profited from Mr. Calder's activities. The shakedown was elegantly delivered, almost conversational. Pay Zane's debts or face consequences. How much profit do you think I made? Our research suggests your wife and Mr. Calder stole approximately $400,000 from various victims. Your company appears to have been their primary vehicle for money laundering. And you want me to pay because they used my business? We want someone to pay. Mr. Calder is unavailable, which makes you responsible for his obligations. Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying the two men with the detached interest of a chess player analyzing his opponent's strategy. What if I told you I know exactly where they went? Greed flickered in their eyes. We're listening. Phoenix, her sister's house on Mockingbird Lane, probably planning to lay low until they can access offshore accounts. The shorter man pulled out his phone and started typing. Within minutes, he had addresses, phone numbers, surveillance options. This information is very valuable, the tall man said. Consider it partial payment toward Mr. Calder's debt. Partial? You still owe us for the inconvenience, and for making us chase them across state lines. Ethan smiled. How much? 50,000, cash, tomorrow morning. That's a lot of money for inconvenience. It's a lot less than 200,000 plus interest. The negotiation was almost friendly. Two professionals discussing the price of violence as if it were any other business transaction. I'll need some time to raise that kind of cash. You have until noon tomorrow. After that, we start charging interest. They stood to leave, satisfied with their progress. 50,000 was more than they'd expected to collect from a secondary target, especially one who'd been cooperative. They made it as far as the front door before Jake Morrison stepped out of the kitchen. Gentlemen, he said politely, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Both men froze, hands moving instinctively toward concealed weapons before Jake's calm voice stopped them. No need for dramatics. Just wanted to clarify something about Mr. Gray's situation. Which is, he's under federal protection as a witness in an ongoing criminal investigation. That makes threatening him a very serious federal crime. Jake's badge case appeared in his hand, FBI credentials clearly visible. The identification was fake, but professionally done, convincing enough to sell the story. The people you're looking for have already been arrested in Phoenix. Mr. Calder is currently in federal custody, along with his associates. Their assets are frozen pending trial. The tall man's face went pale. We weren't told about any federal investigation. Because it's classified. But since you gentlemen seem like reasonable people, I'm willing to chalk this up to miscommunication. Walk away now, forget this address exists, and nobody has to explain anything to a federal judge. And if we don't, Jake's smile was colder than January, then I arrest you for witness intimidation, conspiracy, and whatever weapons charges turn up when we search you. Your employer gets a visit from the FBI, his businesses get audited, and everybody's life becomes very complicated. The two men exchanged glances, calculating odds and consequences. Federal heat was different from local police pressure, more dangerous and harder to manage. We appreciate the clarification, the tall man said finally. Sorry for the misunderstanding. They left without another word, disappearing into the evening like they'd never been there. Jake watched through the window until their car disappeared down the street. That should buy you some time, but it won't last forever. They'll figure out the fake credentials eventually. How long? A few days, maybe a week. After that, you might want to consider relocating. Ethan nodded, already planning his next moves. Thanks for the help. Anytime. But Gray, next time you decide to take on the mob, give me more warning. That weekend, Ethan began dismantling his old life with military precision. The house went on the market Sunday morning, priced to sell quickly. His construction equipment was sold to competitors at below-market rates. Bank accounts were closed, assets liquidated, paper trails eliminated. By Monday afternoon, Ethan Gray had ceased to exist in any meaningful legal sense. The criminal charges came down Tuesday morning. Federal warrants for Lena Gray and Zane Calder on charges of conspiracy, wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. Their photographs appeared on FBI wanted posters, their names added to watch lists and databases. The Phoenix address had been real. Jake's contacts had confirmed their location. But the arrest was still 24 hours away when Vitali's men showed up at the sister's house. Ethan read about it in the newspaper Wednesday morning, sipping coffee in a diner outside Denver where nobody knew his name. Local businessman found dead in Phoenix home invasion. The article was brief, clinical. Zane Calder had been found beaten to death in the garage of a suburban Phoenix residence. Police suspected robbery, but neighbors reported no valuables taken. The homeowner, Lena's sister, had been away visiting friends and discovered the body upon her return. Lena herself had vanished without a trace. Ethan folded the newspaper and considered the strange mathematics of justice. Zane was dead, which wasn't what he'd intended, but wasn't exactly tragic either. The man had been a thief and predator who'd made the mistake of stealing from dangerous people. Lena was alive, but homeless, broke, and hunted by both federal agents and violent criminals. Her career was destroyed, her reputation ruined, her future reduced to looking over her shoulder for the rest of her life. His brother Tyson had been arrested as an accessory to fraud, facing 5 to 10 years in federal prison. Mia would grow up knowing her father was a criminal, but she'd also inherit the college fund Ethan had established in her name before disappearing. Perfect justice didn't exist, but sometimes cosmic balance came close. 3 weeks later, Ethan was framing houses in Colorado under a new name and a carefully constructed identity. The work was honest, the pay was fair, and nobody asked questions about his past. He'd kept one item from his old life, Zane's Rolex, still engraved, achievement unlocked. Every morning, he strapped it to his wrist and remembered that some achievements cost more than money. Some achievements cost everything. 2 years passed in mountain silence and steady work. Ethan built houses for Denver families and tried not to think about the life he'd destroyed in order to escape the people who'd tried to destroy him. The routine was peaceful. Wake before dawn, work until sunset, sleep without dreams. Simple existence for a man who'd learned that complexity bred betrayal. Then Mia's postcard arrived. The front showed downtown Phoenix at sunset, all glass towers and desert beauty. On the back, careful teenage handwriting, "Uncle Ethan, Dad got out early for good behavior. He's different now. Scared, I think. He talks about you sometimes. Wonders if you're okay. I told him you're probably fine wherever you are. Mom sends her love too. She remarried last year to a nice man who treats her right. I'm starting college in the fall. Northwestern, pre-med. Using the scholarship fund you set up. Thank you for everything. I hope you found peace. P.S. Every oath has a price. Tell them I paid in full." Ethan read the message 3 times, focusing on the postscript that perfectly echoed words he'd never written, phrases he'd never spoken to anyone. Smart girl. Too smart, maybe, but smart enough to understand that some prices were worth paying and some oaths were worth keeping, even when everything else fell apart. He burned the postcard that evening, watching Mia's words disappear into smoke and mountain darkness. Some stories ended with justice. Others ended with survival. This one ended with both. A year later, Ethan was drinking coffee in his small apartment when the morning news caught his attention. Federal authorities announced the capture of Lena Gray, wanted in connection with a multi-state fraud scheme. Gray was apprehended in Miami Beach while attempting to board a flight to the Cayman Islands. She has been charged with conspiracy, wire fraud, and money laundering in connection with crimes that defrauded victims of over $400,000. The mugshot showed a woman aged beyond her years, auburn hair gone gray, lines carved by stress and fear, still recognizable as his wife, but hollowed out by 3 years of running. The news report continued. Gray's co-conspirator, Zane Calder, was found murdered in Phoenix in what police believe was a debt collection killing. Gray herself faces 20 to 25 years in federal prison if convicted on all charges. Ethan turned off the television and finished his coffee in silence. Justice delayed wasn't justice denied. Sometimes it was just justice with compound interest. That afternoon, he wrote a letter to Mia at Northwestern University. Nothing dramatic or revealing, just an uncle checking in on his niece's college experience. He signed it E.G. and included a small check for textbooks. Some connections survived everything. Some bonds were stronger than betrayal. Some families were worth saving, even when others had to be destroyed. On his way to the post office, Ethan passed a construction site where a new shopping center was rising from raw earth. The work was honest and necessary, building something useful from nothing but sweat and skill. He stopped to watch the crew work, remembering the satisfaction of creation, the pride of craftsmanship, the simple pleasure of earning pay through effort. Tomorrow, he'd submit his resume to the foreman. Start over again in a new place with clean hands and a clear conscience. Behind him, Denver stretched toward mountains that had stood for millions of years, patient and permanent. indifferent to the small dramas of human ambition and betrayal. Some things lasted forever. Others burned to ash and blew away in the wind. Ethan Gray had learned the difference, and the knowledge had set him free.